Hola, minasan! Welcome back for another round of magic research. Continuing on with the Phyrexian history in the world of magic. Today, gonna be looking at Aether Hub. My first look at the Aether Hub channel with the Brothers War Complete History, Urza versus Mishra, Magic the Gathering lore. So having had covered the Yawgmoth situation and how he managed to mess up Thran and create Phyrexia itself, now we're going to find out what Urza and Mishra are looking for with the Phyrexians and their association with it, and how it affected and impacted all of Dominaria. Oh yeah, I've seen a lot in the cards through the flavor text and so on, and so now it's time to figure out exactly what these two brothers are looking for and what they intend to do, and how they succeeded, where they failed at, and so on. Hopefully, Aether Hub Channel will deliver. So we'll soon find out. All right. So call to action: comment, like, subscribe, follow, and hit the notification bell. And let's begin the research. You'll find links to the in the description below to Aether Hub.
Events known in the Magic the Gathering timeline. The Brothers' War would stand as a conflict that literally changed the face of Dominaria forever. We see the introduction of the modern Phyrexians of the plane, the rise of Urza Planeswalker, and the beginning of the Ice Age. But history is about to be rewritten as Teferi looks to travel to this point in MTG's past to uncover the truth. What is that truth? What really happened during the Brothers' War? Hey everyone, Simon here for the Aether Hub, bringing you more Magic the Gathering lore. We're about to embark on a new set, the Brothers' War, the first of its kind in MTG lore, a set focused not on the events of the past, but revisiting them through modern eyes, not just remembering the stories of old, but perhaps even changing them. But to know exactly what changes during this new story of the Brothers' War, we must first learn what actually took place, or at least the knowledge we're left with on Dominaria's written history. In today's video, we will discuss the complete history of the Brothers' War, what led to the events of this conflict, as well as its consequences, answering the question, what exactly was the Brothers' War? Urza and his brother Mishra were born in the year 0 AR, an abbreviation of Argivian Reckoning, the dating classification used in Magic the Gathering that's an ode to the importance of these two brothers, as it was specifically noted by scholars of New Argive. These brothers would become history themselves, but for now they were simply humans, lacking the legendary subtype. Their family were nobles on the island nation of Argive, located on the continent Tirasair. While not much is known about their early childhood, it is noteworthy to mention that the brothers' mother passed away while they were very young, while their father remarried another woman of noble descent. While their stepmother remains unknown, it was known that she treated them very harshly. 10 years after the birth of the brothers, their father contracted an illness, leading to the brothers being sent to the human archaeologist, Coqui-san, a friend of the family, whom would be prominent in the future the brothers would soon be part of. While under the care of Coqui-san, Urza became more reserved, calculating,
Lord High
and
Artificer.
some could even say awkward. On the contrary, Mishra became more assertive, seeking action over diplomacy, traits characterized by their mana alignments, Urza being mono blue and Mishra being a combination of blue, black, and red. Coqui-san taught the brothers about the Thran, a race of humans long extinct who were unparalleled in technology and artifice. A kingdom that had long since disappeared from Tirasair, leaving only archaeological clues as to how they accomplished their feats. While the history of the Thran was unknown to them at that time, the desert the brothers excavated would mold their two colossal personalities. Urza would enjoy the self-isolation and the requiem of silence of tinkering with the artifacts found in their dig site, while Mishra, being the hands-on kind of guy he was, preferred to be out in the field with the diggers, excavating and finding the artifacts that Urza would then examine himself. While Urza was tinkering, locked away with artifacts, Mishra was the polar opposite, getting to know the people he was working with. Most notably, the desert tribe known as the Magi, who became their friends in this expedition and participated in almost every dig mission at Tocasia's camp. Urza too became well known to the dig team in his own way, as an invaluable asset to Tocasia's mission to uncover more about the Thran. He discovered a relic of the Empire, the Ornithopter, as well as a power stone, which could hold mana and power the Thran technology they had unearthed.
I thought the Ornithopter was present.
Which aided the diggers at the site significantly, and began to experiment and learn how to make ornithopters of his own. However, the brothers' most important and life-changing discovery would be at the caves of Koilos, a cave that housed a danger to the multiverse, a sealed gateway leading to the original plane of Phyrexia. Throughout the brothers' excavations, they noticed a significant number of Thran artifacts referencing or centering around these caves. Surmising that they held a significant secret about the Thran, they set off to explore the mysteries of the desert. When they explored the cave and discovered the Power Stone in the Hall of Tagsin, they were both enamored and allured by its call, each brother reaching out to grab the stone, but as they touched it, a flashing light erupted, sending them flying back against the wall. Upon awakening, they each had one half of the stone. Little did the brothers know what exactly they had just unsealed. Urza's Might Stone granted himself and others
from the Antiquity set.
Weak Stone hindered the progress of others. While the brothers shared a desire for exploration, they grew to disdain each other for their differences. The two were content that day, but their strained relationship would lead them to believe the other unworthy to hold the other half of the stone, eventually leading to a deadly fight between them to gain the half the other brother possessed. The brothers fought each other with the mystic powers provided by the stones, and in that conflict, Tocasia tried to intervene and prevent any damage to the brothers or the stones, only to take a blast of mystical energy leading to a mortal wound, eventually killing her. The brothers became despondent and blamed each other for the death of Tocasia, creating a larger rift that would never be mended. After Tocasia's death, both Urza and Mishra, now without guidance, left the dig site and went their separate ways.
Wow. So, basically, the Weak Stone and the Might Stone that the brothers gained, they had a difference of opinion, and in their fit of rage, they accidentally killed Tocasia and blamed each other for it. And thus the evolved led to not only the evolving of their relationship, but is going to end up changing the whole of Dominaria forever. Wow. So they basically blame each other for her death when actually they both ended up killing her. That's pretty crazy. I was gonna say weird or funny, but no, that's actually pretty crazy. Now, this could be some Cain and Abel level of biblical stuff going on here. Yeah, that's actually pretty. That's pretty good writing. That's pretty good writing. You know, they unintentionally got two stones. A whole stone that split into two, and gave them two distinct powers. One that weakens all creatures and one that gives power to all creatures. From the Antiquity set. And from there, okay, all right, that's actually pretty good. So that's what where the Weak Stone and the Might Stone come from, which is actually very interesting because not only do they have their own cards, but they actually have one whole card for both stones. That's yeah. And the colors are consistent too. The Might Stone has a fist that's in red, and the Weak Stone has the crystal that's green necklace to a creature, displaying what the two could do. Okay, yeah. This is actually pretty cool.
Not knowing that the seeds of war were planted and that a genocidal race was unsealed.
Urza's path. Okay, so we're gonna follow Urza here on this.
The death of Tocasia weighed heavily on both of the brothers' minds. With Mishra fleeing into the desert after his scuffle with Urza, Urza was left to ponder the ramifications of this fight, and how it could affect the greater future. Eventually, he decided to leave the Argivian expedition, knowing full well that he was unable to lead others without Tokasia's wisdom or diplomacy. The nomadic Falagi tribe had become increasingly more aggressive. Distrustful of both magical and artificial technology, they saw the expedition as sacrilegious to the point that any more incursions would be met with hostility. Urza travels to the nation of Yotai, as he opposed to returning home to Argive. Here, he sought employment from the clockmaker Rusko, and became his apprentice in the capital city of Krug. He buried himself in the toils of modern marvels and artifice, as opposed to dealing with the disdainful actions of his past. The muses of time continued to play their strings, bringing another entity into Urza's life. This time, it was the Princess Kayla, the daughter of the king or warlord and sovereign princess of Krug. She had sought a fix for her prized music box, something of which Urza fixed in an instant, enthralling Kayla and thus beginning a prominent relationship for these two.
Oh.
But Kayla's affections weren't only hers to dictate. Days later, the warlord of Krug had issued a challenge, one that would see its winner gain a prominent seat in society along with the hand of his daughter. That right would go to the strongest man in Krug, one who was capable of moving a giant jade statue. Whomever could do this feat would be married to Kayla, while simpler men acted on brute force and strength to move
Urza
the statue.
used
his wits to conquer the challenge.
Yeah.
Urza at first had no desire to win Kayla's heart, but upon closer inspection, Urza discovered that the warlord possessed the Jalum Tome, a volume that held Thran's secrets that he had never uncovered while on Tokasia's expedition. Returning to the site of the challenge months later, Urza brought a newly constructed artifact to move the statue. This was the first prototype of his Avenger, mechanical warriors he would later use to fight in the war, strong enough to pass the warlord's test. Urza told the warlord that strength of muscle is not the only strength, but unwavering intellect and artifice skills made many things possible. The warlord was not convinced simply because a machine moved the statue. It took the promise of many more inventions, such as the ornithopter, for Urza to become part of the royal family. Urza was promoted to Lord High Artificer.
So those are all of his
and became enamored by all the machines and
Avengers
material presented to him, including the resources of the Jalum Tome. Locked in his study, he would ignore his new wife for weeks, pursuing greater knowledge and perfecting his craft. He made amulets that could heal, more efficient ornithopters, and stronger military weapons. To help him, Urza takes on an apprentice by the name of Tanos. The young man had proven himself as a promising artificer by displaying his understanding of organic beings and ability to translate those into artifice. Urza took Tanos under his wing. Everyone was happy, with the exception of Kayla, who grew to hate her husband for being so enthralled with his work, leading him to neglect her.
All right. So Urza basically went to Krug because he left the expedition, took a few items with him, which pissed off the natives. Then went into a workshop. Made his own workshop in Krug to tinker with the tech. He discovered Jalum's tome, which he wants to get, but the only way to get it was to win a test that the warlord had set up by moving the jade statue, and he would not only get the tome and access to resources, but he'd also will be marrying Kayla, the warlord Kayla. He succeeds by creating a prototype that would later be his army, known as Avengers, the robots, which I didn't see any cards on that, I don't recall seeing any cards called Avengers. I'll have to look that up. But yeah, he succeeded. Brought in a young man named Tanos under his wing as his apprentice, and pissed off his wife because he's neglecting her and not giving her the time of day. All right, so that's Urza's path. Now we're doing Mishra's path here. All right, Mishra's path. What did Mishra do on his end?
Rewinding slightly in our story, back to the place where Urza and Mishra split paths, Mishra, horrified by his actions resulting in Tocasia's death, fled to the desert and was intercepted by the Falagi, who enslaved him and took his weak stone. He was forced to do manual labor until one of the leaders of the tribe recognized him as the former apprentice of Tocasia. Though he was still very much a slave, Mishra was allowed to advise the Kadar's son, who would grow to rely on his advice. While he was separated from the weak stone, Mishra begins to have visions of a metallic plane, a void of light. It haunts him, and one night, these nightmares are abruptly ended when the Falagi are attacked by a hawking, dragon-like beast made of metal. Awoken to the carnage, Mishra steals back the weak stone, using the attack as a distraction, hoping to be able to use it against the beast, only to realize that he actually is able to control it.
Oh.
He eventually rises to the rank of wizard, and uses the dragon beast, now known as a dragon engine, to unite the rest of the desert nomad tribes under the Falagi. Mishra would continue to unite the inhabitants of the desert, conquering other tribes. That is until he came to a blockade at the city of Zagan. There, the Zagani had magic that could weaken the dragon engine and cause it to stop responding altogether. Mishra knew he needed to take Zagan, and if he couldn't do it through sheer force, he would have to find another way. Mishra found his advantage in a cruel and devious human woman named Ashnod. She coldly viewed living beings as mechanical
Ashnod's a woman, huh?
only built with organic material rather than artifice. She revealed to Mishra the Staff of Zagan that used magical electricity to manipulate the nerves of the defenders, giving Mishra time to conquer the city. The plan worked, and eventually the Zagani would surrender, and Ashnod would become Mishra's loyal apprentice. Mishra, Ashnod, and the Falagi continued to conquer the desert regions to the point that the coastal nations, the lakes of Argive, Yotai, and Corliss, had no choice but to seek a peaceful means to an end with the Falagi troops at their doorsteps. The nations requested a peace talk at the center point known as Korlinda. There, the nations sent representatives to discuss the situation, Mishra and Urza being among those selected. As demands were being made by all sides, and talks were in the works, Mishra and Urza became well aware of each other's presence. Surprising each other, both brothers decided perhaps it was time to make amends. Any notion of that was quickly dissolved, however, when the peace talks were interrupted by an assault of ornithopters built by Urza. They may have been built by Urza, but they were commanded by the warlord of Krug. Fighting ensues, and the leader of the Falagi, the Kadar, kills the warlord of Krug, Urza's father-in-law. The assault sees the Falagi retreating to the desert, as the events convince Mishra that Urza had no intention of ever letting bygones be bygones. Mishra then vows to end the brothers' scuffle once and for all.
Whoa. Alright, so the Krug war, Mishra and Urza were selected to do peace talks with Fleisha and the country they were invading. And Urza was there, to lend a hand. And suddenly the ornithopters, under the command of the Krug warlord, started attacking as Mishra and Urza were trying to see if they could reconnect. And because of this attack, everything collapsed. All the peace talks collapsed. The warlord got killed off. And Urza and Mishra ended up splitting at that point. Now it's like they're done. Their relationship is over by this point. Okay. The Brothers' War. Now we come to the meat and potatoes, chapter 4, the Brothers' War. This is very well done video, I gotta say. I like the chapters.
All-out war brewing, Urza, now the de facto leader of Yotai, meets with Mishra one more time to attempt peace. During the night, however, Urza finds Kayla half naked with Mishra. Mishra attempting to get Urza's half of the stone that Kayla had stolen. Meanwhile, the Falagi commandos and Mishra's dragon engines were rampaging and massacring the people of Krug, slaughtering men, women, and children. There would certainly be no more peace.
Yeah.
The walls were eviscerated and the city destroyed. Urza could only try to create a safe passage for Krug citizens to flee. The war machines and the Falagi conquered Krug in 27 AR, and with the fall of diplomacy, the Brothers' War had begun. The Brothers' War lasts for about 4 decades, each side
What?
building stronger and fiercer machines of war, devastating the continent of Terracer and the residents alike. Urza builds alliances between Argoth, Yotai, and Corliss, and inadvertently becomes the de facto leader of this alliance, promoting an air of power and confidence in his artifice. Not to be outdone, Mishra becomes the leader of the Falaji, as they continue their war
Oh,
through
Mishra
the
took
continent,
over.
capturing city-states and forcing them to bend to their rule. Urza constructed a defensive line along his boundaries of towers and fortresses, devastating the economy and local wildlife in the process.
Damn.
To add more to his defensive arsenal, he also constructed weapons of war, such as mines, automatons, and anything else his mind could conjure. During this time, Urza's son, Harbin, came into his own. Harbin may not have been as smart as his father, but his talent in artifice was still quite prominent. He was an apprentice under Tanos, and learned much about the world and led a relatively peaceful life, despite the war that was consuming everything around them. However, Harbin was a constant reminder to Urza of his wife's possible infidelity. The question always present in the back of Urza's mind: was Harbin truly Urza's? Or perhaps was he the son of Mishra? Those thoughts would go on to cloud Urza's judgment. With the help of Tanos and Harbin's talented minds, Urza began constructing even more elaborate machines, just as Mishra's forces began to arrive at the borders of Argive. Mishra immediately attacked, and within hours, suffered a resounding defeat at the hands of the constructions the 3 artificers made. With the forces repelled, Urza spent little time in preparing a counteroffense. He ordered raids into the Falaji Desert territories, and success came aplenty. However, in one of these raids, Tanos was captured by Ashnod, who was now Mishra's chief lieutenant. Tanos was able to escape, but while he was busy skulking around, Urza had discovered Ramos, a dragon engine that Mishra had controlled. Just as quickly as he found and reprogrammed it, he lost control, and Ramos was gone. Harbin had discovered Argoth, a continent of unparalleled natural resources. With Falaji and Argivian lands distraught and barren, Urza would travel to Argoth to seek their aid. As is the case with many wars, irony followed Urza to Argoth in the form of his brother Mishra. Mishra wasn't sitting idle during this time. He had grown to hate Urza, so much so that he saw any path to victory. To that end, Ashnod began experimenting flesh and machine fusion, creating legions of mechanized flesh hybrids, those who only listened to Mishra, called the Transmigrants. These cyborgs were strong, but suffered defeat after defeat, leading Mishra to demote Ashnod and send her off to the front lines to help lead other offenses, mainly the battles taking place in Terisia City. Terisia City was known for its ivory towers, and home to citizens wishing to take a third path, siding with neither brother in this war. The third path, otherwise known as the Union, would be responsible for the development of magical knowledge and the use of Terracer's mana. They also possessed the ancient Thran artifact that would later be known as the Golgathian Silex. Ashnod's woes would not end there, because the fanatical cult that worshipped the Phyrexian demon Gix would provide evidence to the maddened mind of Mishra that she had in fact betrayed him, forcing her to be exiled. The cult of Gix had infiltrated all sides of this war. Urza and Mishra's forces, as well as the Third Path, all had members of the Brotherhood within them. Gix himself told Mishra, whose health was deteriorating, that the body was a machine, and machines could be rebuilt and perfected. Completely enamored, he agreed to go under the knife and fuse with artifacts. Mishra had learned of Argoth, and was already fighting the local inhabitants there, as he saw the island as an opportunity to test out his new body. The locals, not wanting anybody to intrude on their island, began attacking Urza's forces as well, with armies of elves and treefolk, for Argoth was elvish land. One night, the Argothians attacked Urza with devastating force. Though the Argothians retreated, Urza and his allies were sorely beaten, leading Mishra to see this as the perfect opportunity to remove his brother from the board state. Although the smarter decision would have been to retreat, Urza in his arrogance would not. Seeing this as the be-all end-all fight, he stood his ground and vowed this to be the end.
Ooh, this was a long segment. Wow, that was a whole heap of war going on there. Yeah, so Man. So Ashnod captured Tawnos. Ashnod experimented on humans, turning them into cyborgs called transmigrants. They weren't winning, so Ashnod got banished. Mishra took over the Falashi tribe uh, and started decimating Terracer, the continent. The war went for 4 decades. All the countries and towns throughout the continent got decimated. That's insane. That's insane. And not only that, but Urza's son Harbin, Urza doesn't even know if that's really his son because Kayla had an affair with Mishra of all things. Oh wow! And not only that, but now both of them are building all this magical tech and unleash it throughout the whole world. And neither of them were aware of the fact that the cult of Gix had infiltrated not just only them, but also also the Union, who was a neutral faction and wanted to deal with the brothers. Um, wow. So basically, everything went to heck. So basically, the cult of Gigs had been lying in wait for something like this. They, for that opportunity. So the brothers brought attention to them as they tinkered around with the artifacts and making all sorts of weapons and such. And ultimately, with Ashnod doing the experimentations of turning humans into artifact creatures, the cult of Gix caught wind and infiltrated because they're about to make their big move, because of this war. So in a sense, Urza and Mishra unintentionally may have opened up a path for the Phyrexians to make their return after thousands of years. Cataclysmic End, Chapter 5.
Here on Argoth, a land that neither brother would claim as their own,
Argoth
would be the grave of one of them. Heartbeats slowed, the crescendo of silence echoed through the field, and with one motion of Urza's hand, a charge was ordered. Armies clashed, more blood would shed. 60 years of fighting would end tonight. With regret in his heart, Urza fought. Within seconds of engaging, the armies turned on each other. It was utter chaos. Mishra's dragon engines betrayed and routed Ashnod's transmigrants. Urza's automatons sent his apprentices' clay soldiers back to the earth as neither army obeyed commands. Within this calamity, a truly horrific sight approached Urza, his brother Mishra. Wielding their respective stones, they engaged in battle. In mere seconds, a war of 60 years ended with a mortal blow dealt to Mishra. However, to Urza's horror, Mishra did not falter, barely acknowledging the mortal wound gaping in his side. Mishra tried to retreat, though not before Urza could see the truth. Mishra had become mechanized, with cables and oil spewing from his chest. Mishra became so distraught in his hatred that he became a machine himself in order just to overthrow his brother. As the war should have ended there, more bad news approached. Urza discovered that Gix had sabotaged the machines, corrupting them, leading to the massive battlefield confusion. Before the Battle of Argoth, when Tawnos was captured by Ashnod, the two conducted in more diplomacy than you would realize. It was
Really?
Tawnos who convinced Ashnod of Mishra's madness, as well as assuring her of the utter destruction should both the brothers be left to their own devices. It was during this time that Ashnod held some reservations about the war. In losing faith in her master, Ashnod worked alongside Tawnos to end this conflict,
Wow.
handing over to him the Golgothian Silex, which she had taken from a member of the Third Path when she and their forces invaded Teresia City. Now, with the two armies utterly uncontrollable and the fate of the entire continent at stake, Tawnos presents Urza with the Silex. Urza knew only artifice in his life, but the Silex was something new. It had been a force of magic, of mana, of power. He ordered the departure of his forces and began to try to understand the Silex. However, time was short. Mishra would arrive atop a dragon engine. However, his atop had become more of a merge, as Mishra became the dragon engine himself.
Wow.
With tears in his eyes, remembering the childhood the brothers shared, remembering their time under Tokasia, remembering how things were and how things could have been, Urza listened to the whispers of the Silex and poured his power into it. The Silex was activated, destroying everything within its radius. Argoth, Terracer, the Falagi, Dominaria, the two brothers' forces, everything was in ruins. In the Silex's wake, the brothers' war had ended. While it utterly destroyed Mishra, it would not be the end of Urza. As Urza's body absorbed the blast, his latent planeswalker spark ignited. The powers of the very multiverse washed over his body. His life was not extinguished, rather enhanced. The lost halves of the Power Stone, the Might Stone and Weak Stone, once carried by both the brothers, were absorbed into Urza's body, each half becoming one of his eyes. With their power and the Planeswalker spark within him, Urza was reborn as Urza Planeswalker. The Silex too would have a lasting effect on the lands of Dominaria. The massive explosion ripped through the plane's atmosphere. It would usher in a new ice age across the entire planet. Temperatures dropped, cold winds blew, as Dominaria would enter in the coldest parts of its history for countless years as a result of the Silex's use. With that, the Brothers' War was at an end. The traces of Phyrexia's corruption on Dominaria wiped clean by the Silex's blast and laid dormant for many more years after that.
So delayed.
However, that is merely history. And as we look on the story of Magic the Gathering now, with Teferi heading back in time, this history could very well be rewritten.
Oh, Teferi. Oh.
And there you guys go, the complete history of the
Wow.
Brothers' War as it happened in MTG's history. Now knowing what the Brothers' War was, we're better prepared to experience the possible alternate events that could take place in this new upcoming set, where we're revisiting this time period. With Teferi, the time-bending planeswalker, traveling back to the Brothers' War to uncover the secret use of the Silex, there are many things that could come to light, originally lost to history, or things he could inadvertently change about what transpired then. That's all still left to be known, but make sure you become a subscriber and tick that notification bell to catch our videos.
All right, that's fantastic. Wow, what an ending! Oh crap, man, that explains the Ice Age set. Man, Urza just completely hit the reset button hard. It got to Kingdom Come levels, beyond apocalyptic. But what's amazing about it is the fact that that the Cult of Gix was very, very close to getting the Phyrexians released, and as a result, Urza made the ultimate move to basically shut down all of the plane of Dominaria, and reduce it to an era of Ice Age where where everything becomes hard and such. The war really went crazy. It's very hard to tell though, because from the impression that I've gotten, Urza was supposed to be like a bad guy, and Mishra a more bad guy, badder guy. But to see how the events turned out with Ashnod, turning on Mishra and Mishra becoming the Dragon Engine itself, part of the Dragon Engine, his determination to kill off his brother, it's insane. And to think that all of this started from just a simple accident, just one simple accident that was Tokasia's death, that neither of them were to blame. They were arguing with each other, but neither of them, deliberately killed her. Saying neither of them deliberately killed her, but they blamed each other for her death either way, and it devolved over time. Even when Urza had his little army and decided to do, because that's the thing, he built his army of the Avengers, and let's see here, let me double check my notes here. It was the invasion, right? Yeah, the Avengers, let's see, in Urza's path, yeah, it was really Mishra, right? Mishra was the one that was trying to. Yeah, he took over for. Let's see. I just want to double check here. Yeah, they were reunited for peace talks, but the Krug warlord exasperated and ruined the peace talks. Uh, that's insane. It's just that how both of them went on their separate paths, seeking to harness the power of artifacts and artificers. Well, Mishra went the route of fusing human with machine, while Urza just built machines. Just good old old fashioned machines, ornithopters, and so on. And ultimately, Krug screws everything up, ruins peace talks that Urza and Mishra were involved in, and Urza and Mishra ended up creating their factions and started a 4 decades long war. That's insane. That's insane. And ultimately, it ends with Urza just wiping the whole thing out with the Silex, and he becomes the first. I guess he becomes the first Planeswalker, if I'm understanding this correctly. He ultimately became the first Planeswalker, which is pretty amazing. That's the Might Stone and the Weak Stone put together in his eyes, and that along with with the Silex. That's pretty fantastic storytelling, honestly. I like how that all transpired. It was very consistent. All the intrigue and mistakes. This was a good summarization done by Aether Hub here. Very good job, honestly. Looking at Urza, and the crazy thing is that they weren't good guys. Neither of them were good guys. He conquered people just as much as Mishra did. You know, and unfortunately, he still. But the crazy thing is that he still had a heart out for a heart for Mishra, his brother. Racked with sadness and guilt. And he had to end him. But the thing is that by him becoming a planeswalker, he was able to delay he stopped Gix inadvertently. Apparently, he inadvertently stopped the cult of Gix from unlocking the Phyrexians and further caused the Phyrexians from not being unleashed onto the world. Basically, delayed the inevitable. It seems like they're an inevitable. It seems like they're an inevitable. This was yeah. The Phyrexian the whole Phyrexian saga is quite amazing, especially considering that given that this is supposed to be Magic the Gathering and it's supposed to be all about magic and high fantasy. The whole focus, the whole entire shaping of the Magic lore revolves around machines. I find that very fascinating that the writers and lore masters in Magic went that route. Quite honestly, when you think about it. What I'm saying? This is supposed to be a high fantasy adventure. And people have been griping recently with sets like Thunder Junction and Duskmourn and now Aether Drift being, being Plains of Hats. What I'm saying? The whole story of hats, everybody, the story of hats and they're throwing in all this crazy tech like modernized tech. Duskmourn is based in 1980s horror mansion. It's a mansion that is supposed to be influenced by 1980s horror, and Thunder Junction is the Wild West, and Aether Drift is the wacky racers, Fast and the Furious racer, speed racer influence. That means that people are driving cars and such on a racing track. So people are getting weirded out by the modernization of Magic the Gathering. Kamigawa Neon Dynasty is the exception to the rule, primarily because of the fact that we had the feudal Japan themed set of Kamigawa block 20 years earlier. And so Neon Dynasty had a consistent story showing their progression into a modern age where they where magic and where the spirits known as Kami and the machines and the giant mechs Japan's Gundams, all came together. It's the first sci-fi setting, becoming the first sci-fi setting in the Magic the Gathering. But people loved it because there was a progression and everything. But people are getting weirded out with those three sets, the last three sets that are set in the modern age. And I could see, and honestly, I could see lore wise, that you can have the progression going. New Capenna is another one set in like 1930s gangster thing. It's got all the Art Deco and the Art Deco magical vehicles and such. But to get to my point, the lore masters and the writers, I can see that they want to transition from high fantasy over to a more modern fantasy, sci-fi. I wouldn't. Well, sci-fi fantasy would be a bad move, but modern fantasy. But they've been very inconsistent. They've been inconsistent ever since All Will Be One, which we're gonna find out exactly. Because I learned about All Will Be One, the new Phyrexia from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. So that's what's supposed to come to a head, but we gotta get through Teferi and find out what Teferi did. That's the next step in the Phyrexian saga. But basically, I see what they were doing with New Capenna, Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, and now with the three recent ones. But then you get Bloomborough. They returned to Ravnica. They did a return to Ravnica. Which is detective themed, so to again add to the modernization of Magic. But then they go to Bloomborough, which is high fantasy, influenced by the Secret of Nim, where you have the woodland critters with magic powers and such. Well, I wouldn't say Secret of Nim. That's a bit more sci-fi. There was another one that they were more specific with that was influenced, but it was very high fantasy, no tech. Saying the artifacts were more nature built, like using how you say makeshift boats, saying makeshift boats out of sticks and stones and so on. But the point I'm trying to make is that I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to they're trying to progress the setting and make the planes modernized and everything with modern technology and so on. Because you can't just go creating an entire story dedicated to technology with the Phyrexians and such, and just want to have only high fantasy, like Conan the Barbarian high fantasy, where there is no science tech. It's just willy-nilly fantasy. This has been established from the very beginning of its lore that the artifacts were going to be the principal factor in Magic the Gathering itself, and was put on full display here with the Brothers' War, and soon enough with the Phyrexians when they finally make their arrival in the New Age. So I think that the main problem is lore wise is that they are creating a Planet of Hats, which is something that Star Trek fell into. When they were doing when they have a Planet of Hats. Rubber forehead, the rubber forehead aliens, as the saying goes. Every alien just has a rubber forehead, and that's it. You're a completely different species, or you got various ears, and that's what happened with these recent sets. Cowboy hat, 80s baseball cap, the racing helmet, detective hat. And people are getting tired of it, and I understand. It's kind of messing up the lore. It is messing up with the pacing of the lore, with this happening, and we should get back to something like this. This epicness where high fantasy magic clashes with high sci-fi horrors. Quite honestly, because the Phyrexians are horrors, and the fact that we got to see how the non-Phyrexian humans would take life and turn them into cybernetic machines, in contrast to what Yawgmoth did with when he built Phyrexia, established Phyrexia, is quite amazing. It's a very, very amazing story, and Yeah. Next up is Teferi. What did Teferi do? As noted by Aether Hub. We'll have to find out on the next research. So, head on over to Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com and grab yourself a copy of The Impossible Man, a strange fantasy novel written by me. You'll find links to the book in the description down below, along with links to other merch such as pins, stickers, music, t-shirts. Enjoy the products. Thank you for your patronage. And if you happen to have purchased a copy of The Impossible Man and did a lore video on it or an analysis video on YouTube, thank you very much. I look forward to hearing what your take is. And if you're interested, you could join me on my live multi-stream on Twitch and Kick every Monday through Thursday, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I do Japanese cultural studies, lore research, games, and more. Playing games and more. I look forward to hanging out with you. So until the next Magic the Gathering research, thank you all for joining me, and I wish you all a good night. Hey, buenas noches, and oyasumi nasai.